The Empire came in strength. Humans replied with a punchline. Commander Susan Miller rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the large screen in front of her. She had been on duty for 16 hours straight in the Earth Defense Force headquarters. The underground facility in Colorado was quiet at 3:17 a.m., with only the night shift personnel monitoring Earth's orbital defense systems. Susan reached for her coffee mug, finding it empty again. She was about to call for a break when every alarm in the command center began to wail at once. Red lights flashed as the night shift scrambled to their stations. "Report!" Susan shouted over the noise. Lieutenant Doug Bennett's fingers flew across his console. "Multiple objects just appeared in high orbit, Commander. They weren't there 10 seconds ago. No entry signature detected." Susan's heart raced. "How many objects?" 53. No, 57 large vessels. Each one is... This can't be right." Doug looked up, his face pale. "Each one is approximately 2 miles long." Susan grabbed the emergency phone on the wall. "Get Admiral Clark. Now." Within minutes, screens throughout the command center showed images of the vessels. They were sleek blue-gray ships shaped like arrowheads. Nothing in Earth's military archives matched their design. Admiral William Clark arrived 20 minutes later, still adjusting his uniform. The 60-year-old man had deep lines on his face, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "What do we know?" he asked without preamble. Susan handed him a tablet. They appeared simultaneously in orbit. No warning, no approach vectors. They just materialized. They're holding position above major cities. No communications yet. The Admiral skimmed through the data. Weapons capabilities? Unknown, but energy readings suggest they could glass half a continent with one ship. We have 57 of them pointing at us. The Admiral's next question was interrupted by a lieutenant at the communications station. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Television, radio, internet, everything. Even my phone is receiving it." The main screen flickered to show a humanoid figure with blue-scaled skin and 4 glowing yellow eyes. The alien wore an elaborate uniform with medals and symbols no human had ever seen before. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, "I am Supreme Warlord Zexithar of the Vraxian Empire. For 10,000 cycles we have ruled the stars around you. Your isolation ends today. The Vraxian Empire claims this system as our own. Your species will submit or face extinction. You have 6 Earth hours to surrender your governing authorities and military command structure. Resistance is inadvisable." The message repeated in every major language on Earth before the transmission ended. The room was silent for several seconds before erupting into frantic activity. Admiral Clark began issuing orders to contact world leaders and establish a global response team. "Get me the President, the UN Secretary General, and as many heads of state as you can reach," Clark ordered. "And someone find out how they learned our languages so perfectly." Susan turned to her team. "I want everything we can. Learn about their ships, energy signatures, weak points, communication patterns. If they sneeze, I want to know about it." 4 hours later, Susan stood in a hastily assembled war room with representatives from every major military power on Earth. Screens showed panicking cities, roads clogged with people trying to flee, and the alien ships hanging in the sky like dark promises. "Our combined nuclear arsenal might take out 1 or 2 ships," said General Lee from China, "before the rest turn Earth into ash." "We should comply and negotiate from a position of cooperation," argued the British representative. "Perhaps they will be reasonable." "Reasonable?" the Russian general scoffed. "They come with warships and demands. This is not the behavior of those who wish to talk." As the debate continued, Susan noticed a junior communications officer waving frantically from the doorway. She slipped out to speak with him. "What is it, Frank?" she asked. Frank Johnson was only 26, with unruly red hair and freckles that made him look even younger. He was fidgeting nervously. "Commander, I found something weird in their transmission code," he said, showing her his tablet. "Look at these patterns." Susan looked at the complex sequences, not understanding. "What am I seeing?" Well, it reminds me of something I studied in college. I was a communications major, but I also did stand-up comedy on weekends." Frank looked embarrassed. I wrote my thesis on computational linguistics and humor. These patterns, they're similar to how humor translation algorithms work, except they're missing something major. Susan was skeptical but desperate for any insight. Explain it to me, like I'm 5. Frank nodded eagerly. Okay, so when computer programs try to translate jokes between languages, they look for certain patterns. But the Vraxians' communication system has big blind spots. They can translate our words perfectly, but there are gaps where humor should be processed. It's like they don't understand jokes at all. And this helps us how? Susan asked. Well, think about it. They've studied our languages and communication but missed something fundamental about how humans talk to each other. Humor is uniquely human. What if we could use that? Susan was about to dismiss the idea when something clicked. You're saying we might have a blind spot in their understanding that we could exploit? Exactly. Frank's eyes lit up. Their systems seem perfectly tuned to understand literal communication, threats, diplomacy, even emotional pleas. But show me any evidence they understand irony, sarcasm, or puns. Susan grabbed Frank's arm and pulled him toward the elevator. We need to find Dr. Laura Bennett, right now. Dr. Bennett was the leading researcher in psychological operations and had written papers on cognitive warfare. They found her in a small office, surrounded by screens showing Vraxian ship movements. After Frank explained his theory, Dr. Bennett's face showed the first hint of hope anyone had seen since the aliens arrived. It's possible, she said slowly. Many human cognitive scientists believe humor evolved as a way to deal with incongruity, when things don't match our expectations. If the Vraxians evolved differently, they might not have that cognitive tool. Susan leaned forward. Could we use this? Dr. Bennett nodded slowly. Maybe. Their translation systems are looking for meaning, but humor often works by subverting meaning. If we could craft messages that seem straightforward but contain layers of jokes, puns, and misdirection, we could confuse their systems, Frank finished, like telling a computer to divide by 0. I need authorization to test this, Susan said, already reaching for her phone to call Admiral Clark. The Admiral was skeptical but had no better options. You have 1 hour to prove this concept, then we need a response ready. The clock is ticking. As Susan, Frank, and Dr. Bennett rushed to set up their test, Susan couldn't help but smile at the absurdity. Earth's first alien contact, and humanity's best hope might be dad jokes and puns. If this works, she muttered, no one will ever believe it. But she knew humanity had always laughed in the face of danger. It was time to see if they could laugh their way out of extinction. The Empire came in strength. Humans replied with a punchline. Dr. Laura Bennett worked fast. She had 1 hour to prove that humor could be a weapon against an alien empire. The small conference room was now filled with computers, screens, and 6 people she had pulled from different departments. We need to craft a test message, she told the team. Something that seems normal on the surface but contains layered jokes and puns that might confuse their translation systems. Frank Johnson nodded eagerly. I've been studying their communication patterns. Their syntax is too perfect. No human speaks that formally all the time. Susan Miller paced the room, checking her watch every few minutes. 5 hours had passed since the alien ultimatum. Only 1 hour remained before the deadline. How will we know if it works? She asked. Laura pointed to a screen showing the largest alien ship. We'll send the test message directly to the flagship. If their systems struggle to process it, we might see energy fluctuations or communication disruptions. A young woman named Olivia Wright raised her hand. She was an expert in artificial intelligence. If their translation systems are AI-based, they might try to find patterns where none exist. Humans understand that jokes aren't meant to be taken literally, but computers struggle with that concept. The team worked quickly, drafting a message that appeared to be a simple greeting, but contained multiple layers of wordplay. They inserted puns, idioms, and jokes that relied on cultural context. Ready to send, Frank said, looking at Susan for approval. Susan took a deep breath and nodded. Do it. The message was transmitted directly to the Vraxian flagship. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the monitoring equipment began to show strange readings. Energy spike in their communication array. reported Carl Jackson, the team's engineer. They're redirecting computing power to analysis. A lot of it. Laura smiled. They're trying to decode a message that has no hidden meaning. They think we're using some kind of encryption. The team watched as the alien ship's energy readings fluctuated. Suddenly, a new transmission came through from the Vraxians. Please clarify previous communication. Contextual parameters unclear. The room erupted in cheers. Frank jumped up and down, hugging the nearest person. It works, he shouted. They can't process the humor. Susan immediately called Admiral Clark, who arrived minutes later with Colonel Ted Harrison from the Special Operations Division. Explain this to me again, Admiral Clark said after Laura summarized their findings. You're saying we can confuse their systems with jokes? Not just jokes, Laura explained. Humor that relies on cultural context, double meanings, and deliberately misplaced expectations. Their translation systems are trying to find logical meaning where there isn't any. Colonel Harrison, a tall man with a serious face, nodded slowly. Psychological warfare against an alien species. I never thought I'd see the day. They quickly developed what they called the Punchline Protocol, a multi-layered communication strategy that would seem like cooperation on the surface but contain nested jokes and misdirection. We need to buy time, Susan said. If we can keep them confused, maybe we can find a weakness in their ships. Patricia Gomez, the chief engineer from NASA, joined their group. She had been analyzing the alien vessel's energy signatures. If we can get them to divert enough computing power to translation efforts, it might affect their weapon systems, she suggested. These ships run on networked computing. Everything is connected. The deadline was approaching fast. World leaders had agreed to try the Punchline Protocol, having no better options. The alternative was either surrender or certain destruction. The team moved to the main command center, where they could coordinate with military forces worldwide. Laura sat at a console, finalizing what would be humanity's official response to the Vraxian ultimatum. We're sending them a modified version of Who's on First, she explained to the Admiral. But it looks like formal diplomatic language on the surface. Abbott and Costello might save the world, Frank muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. At exactly 6 hours after the ultimatum, they sent their response. The message began with what appeared to be formal acceptance of the aliens' terms, but quickly devolved into increasingly confusing statements filled with Earth idioms, puns, and cultural references. On the main screen, they could see the flagship's energy readings spike dramatically. Secondary systems throughout the alien fleet began to fluctuate. They're sharing the message fleet-wide, Carl reported. They're all trying to decode it. Laura nodded. Now we need to keep going. Flood their systems with more of the same, but different jokes each time. Keep them guessing. Teams around the world began sending messages to the alien fleet. Jokes from every culture, wordplay in dozens of languages, memes and pop culture references, all formatted to look like serious communication. Colonel Harrison organized military forces to prepare for a potential counterstrike. If this buys us time, we need to use it, he said. Earth's combined military forces are on standby. By the 7-hour mark, the alien fleet had not opened fire. Instead, they were broadcasting a continuous stream of requests for clarification. Their once perfect English now contained strange errors, as if their translation systems were breaking down. It's working, Susan said, allowing herself to feel a small spark of hope. But we need more. Patricia pointed to new data coming in. Their ships are using massive amounts of energy on internal communications. I think they're arguing about how to interpret our messages. Admiral Clark turned to Susan. We need to take this further. If humor is confusing them, let's hit them with everything we've got. The team expanded their strategy. They began sending clips from comedy shows, absurdist literature, and nonsensical poems. Each message was designed to force the aliens' translation systems to work harder. By the 10-hour mark, the alien ships had moved out of their perfect formation. Some had drifted slightly, as if their positioning systems were affected by the computing resources being diverted elsewhere. Frank pointed to a new message coming in from the flagship. They're trying to adapt. This message has attempted humor in it, but it's wrong. The message read, "Human representatives, we understand your communication style now. We also can do the funny speaking. Please respond with normal words, or we will destroy your joke cities. This is not a laughing time." Laura couldn't help smiling. They're trying to speak our language, but they don't understand the concept behind humor. They think it's just a strange form of communication. "Can we use this?" Susan asked. "Absolutely," Laura replied. "Let's respond with something that seems to acknowledge their understanding, but actually contains even more complex humor." As they worked on the next phase of their plan, Susan looked around the room at her team. Humans using jokes to fight an alien invasion. It was absurd, but it was working. Maybe, she thought, laughter really is the best medicine, even for an alien invasion. The Empire came in strength. Humans replied with a punchline. 12 hours had passed since the Vraxian ultimatum. The alien ships still hung in Earth's orbit, but they had not opened fire. Small victories, Susan thought as she watched the main screen in the command center. "They're broadcasting again," Frank Johnson said, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "Putting it on screen now." Supreme Warlord Zexthar appeared, but something was different. His 4 yellow eyes blinked rapidly, and he seemed less composed than before. "Earth representatives," he said, his perfect English now slightly off rhythm. "Your communication patterns are irregular and cause processing difficulties. We will extend deadline for submission by 6 hours. Use this time to prepare normal response. Humor tactics are not effective strategy. End transmission." The screen went black. The room was silent for a moment before Laura laughed. "Not effective?" she said. "Then why are they extending the deadline?" "They're struggling," Admiral Clark nodded. "But they're adapting. We need to escalate." Colonel Harrison stood up from his station. "We have reports from our satellites. The alien ships are running intensive scans of Earth's communication networks. They're trying to understand our humor to counter it." Patricia Gomez had been monitoring the energy readings from the alien fleet. "They're diverting huge amounts of power to their computing systems. Their weapons are at lower power than before." Susan turned to Laura. "We need to hit them harder. If they're studying our humor, let's give them too much to process." "I have an idea," Frank said. "What about using humor that relies on visual components? Memes, visual puns, jokes that don't make sense without seeing the image. Their text processors will try to understand them without the context." Laura nodded excitedly. "And jokes that rely on sound similarities. Puns that only work when heard, not when analyzed as text." The team quickly set up what they called Operation Punchline. Every TV station, radio channel, and internet service began broadcasting a carefully crafted mix of comedy. Old comedy routines, stand-up specials, memes, dad jokes, all selected to be as confusing as possible to an alien intelligence trying to decode them. Meanwhile, Captain George Rivera commanded Earth's only functional orbital defense platform. It was small and had limited weapons, but he had a different mission now. "We're in position," he reported over the secure channel. "Ready to deploy the transmitters." Susan gave the order. "Do it." The defense platform launched dozens of small devices that attached themselves to the hulls of the nearest alien ships. These devices, quickly built by Patricia's engineering team, were designed to broadcast directly into the ship's internal communication systems. "Transmitters active," George reported. "Broadcasting Laughbox Alpha now." Laughbox Alpha was a collection of jokes specifically designed to create logical paradoxes. Jokes with no punchlines, punchlines without setups, and circular reasoning that would force any logical system to use more and more resources trying to make sense of nonsense. On the main screen, they could see the energy readings of the affected ships fluctuate wildly. "It's working," Patricia said. "Their systems are trying to process the transmissions as important data, but they can't make sense of it." Frank was monitoring the aliens' communications. "They're sending emergency signals to each other. I think some of their systems are crashing." Laura couldn't believe it was actually working. "They have no defense against this. Their entire communication system is based on logical processing of information. Humor breaks all their rules." We need to push our advantage, Admiral Clark said. Get me the president. Within the hour, world leaders had approved a limited military operation. Earth's combined forces would target the alien ships that showed the most disruption from the humor attacks. Susan watched as fighter jets took off from bases around the world. They carried special missiles designed to attach more transmitters to the alien vessels rather than trying to destroy them. First wave reporting success, Colonel Harrison announced. Transmitters attached to 23 more ships. Deploying. Laughbox Beta. Laughbox Beta contained human comedy from across cultures, jokes that relied on cultural context the aliens couldn't possibly understand. Chinese puns, Russian wordplay, Nigerian folktales with humorous twists, and American pop culture references. The effect was immediate. Several alien ships began to drift out of formation. Their weapon systems powered down as all resources were diverted to trying to process the flood of confusing information. 20 hours after the initial ultimatum, Susan received a surprising report. "Commander," Frank called out, "we're picking up transmissions from inside the alien ships. They're arguing." He put the translated audio on speakers. Alien voices spoke rapidly, some sounding agitated. The human transmissions contain hidden attack codes. No, they are attempting to confuse our translators. I propose direct neural scans of captured humans to understand. The Supreme Warlord demands results. Explain the meaning of knock knock, who is there, immediately. Susan couldn't help smiling. The mighty Vraxian Empire, with technology centuries beyond Earth's, was being brought down by knock knock jokes. Laura had been working with linguists to analyze the alien language patterns. They don't just lack humor, she explained to Susan. They don't understand the concept of saying something you don't literally mean. No sarcasm, no irony, no metaphors. Their entire society must be built on direct communication, Susan realized. No wonder our jokes are like weapons to them. A new alert sounded. One of the alien ships had broken formation and was moving away from Earth. They're retreating? Frank asked hopefully. No, Patricia said, checking her readings. They're moving to a different orbit. I think they're trying to get away from our transmissions. More ships began to move, creating distance between themselves. They're isolating their ships, Colonel, Harrison said. Smart move. They're trying to prevent our infection from spreading. Susan knew they couldn't let up. Launch the next phase. Get those transmitters on every ship we can reach. As Earth's military forces deployed more transmitters, something unexpected happened. Some alien ships began firing, not at Earth, but at other alien ships that showed signs of complete system failure. They're shooting their own ships, Frank said in disbelief. Laura nodded grimly. Contamination protocol. They think our humor is some kind of virus that might spread. Back to their empire. Admiral Clark turned to Susan. We're actually winning. Keep pushing. By the 30th hour, 7 alien ships had been destroyed by their own fleet. 15 more were completely disabled, their systems overwhelmed by the constant stream of jokes, puns, and memes. Supreme Warlord Zexthar appeared on screen again. His uniform was now disheveled and his eyes darted nervously. Humans, he said, his once smooth voice now halting. We will withdraw from this system. Your weapons are unexpected. The Vraxian Empire recognizes your right to. Why did the chicken cross the road? The transmission cut off abruptly. Susan looked around at her team, their faces showing a mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and hope. Did we just win an alien war with dad jokes? Frank asked. Susan smiled. Not yet, but we're getting there. The Empire came in strength. Humans replied with a punchline. The mood in the command center was cautiously hopeful. 2 days had passed since the Vraxian fleet arrived. Nearly half their ships were now either disabled or showing serious system malfunctions. Earth's military forces had successfully attached transmitters to 39 of the 57 alien vessels. Status report, Admiral Clark demanded as he entered the room. He had barely slept in the past 48 hours. Susan handed him a tablet. 17 ships have completely withdrawn from Earth orbit. They're holding position near the moon. 22 ships show critical system failures. The rest are still operational but at reduced capacity. And our losses? The Admiral asked. Colonel Harrison answered. 12 fighter jets shot down, 46 casualties. Considering what we're up against, it's a miracle. Frank Johnson had been analyzing the alien communications. They're in complete disarray. Some ships want to retreat. Others want to nuke the planet from orbit and be done with it. Their chain of command is breaking down. Laura Bennett and Olivia Wright had been working on what they called Laugh Box Omega, a final payload of humor designed to completely overwhelm the aliens' logical processing systems. It's ready, Laura told Susan. We've combined every form of humor we could think of. Jokes that work in multiple languages but mean different things. Visual puns. Jokes that rely on sound but make no sense written down. Absurdist humor. Anti-jokes and recursive jokes that never actually reach a punchline. Olivia added, we also included paradoxes disguised as jokes. If their systems try to process these logically, they'll get stuck in infinite loops. Admiral Clark studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet. We need to target their flagship. If we can disable Zexthar's command ship, the rest might retreat. Major Nicole Davis had been chosen to lead the mission. She was one of Earth's best pilots, with a calm demeanor that had earned her the nickname Ice. She stood at attention as she received her orders. This is a suicide mission, she said matter-of-factly. Their flagship is still at full defensive capability. Admiral Clark nodded grimly. We wouldn't ask if the fate of humanity wasn't at stake. Nicole smiled slightly. I didn't say I wouldn't do it. Just stating facts. She assembled a squadron of 12 pilots. Their jets were equipped with special missiles containing the Laugh Box Omega transmitters. The plan was simple but dangerous. Get close enough to attach the transmitters to the flagship. As Nicole's squadron prepared for takeoff, Susan addressed the command center. Every ship we disable buys us more time. Every hour we survive is another hour to find a permanent solution. This isn't just about today. It's about securing humanity's future among the stars. The mission began at dawn. Nicole's squadron took off from bases around the world, using the cover of disabled alien ships to mask their approach. Bravo squadron approaching target zone, Nicole reported over the comm. No reaction from the flagship yet. In the command center they watched, through satellite feeds as the small jets approached the massive alien vessel. The flagship was over 2 miles long, bristling with weapons and surrounded by smaller patrol craft. They've spotted us, one of Nicole's pilots reported. Defense systems activating. The alien ship fired energy weapons that cut through the sky, like blue lightning. 3 jets erupted in flames immediately. Evasive maneuvers, Nicole ordered. Remember the plan? We just need 1 transmitter to attach successfully. The remaining jets scattered, dodging the energy beams as best they could. 2 more were hit, spiraling down toward the ocean below. I'm going in, Nicole announced. She pushed her jet to maximum speed, heading straight for the flagship. Susan held her breath as she watched. Nicole's jet weaved through the energy beams, getting closer and closer to the alien ship. Almost there, Nicole said, her voice steady despite the danger. Launching payload now. Her jet released the missile containing the transmitter. At that moment, an energy beam clipped her wing. The jet spun wildly, smoke pouring from the damaged engine. Did it attach? Nicole asked as she struggled to control her aircraft. Confirm transmitter status. Patricia checked the signal. Transmitter attached, it's activating now. In the command center, they could see the flagship's energy readings fluctuate wildly as Laughbox Omega began broadcasting directly into their systems. Nicole, get out of there, Susan ordered. Working on it, Nicole replied. She managed to level her jet enough to aim for the ocean, ejecting just before it crashed into the waves. Her parachute opened, and rescue teams were already on their way. On the main screen, they could see the effects spreading through the flagship. Lights flickered across its surface. Its weapons powered down. Smaller ships nearby began to behave erratically, as if receiving conflicting orders. It's working, Frank said excitedly. Their main communication hub is broadcasting our jokes to the entire fleet. Laura pointed to new data coming in. They're trying to shut down communications completely, but our transmitter is mimicking their command protocols. Every time they try to block it, it shifts to a new channel. Within an hour, the flagship was completely dark, drifting slightly from its position. The remaining alien ships began to pull back, moving away from Earth. Are they retreating? Colonel, Harrison asked. I think they're afraid of catching whatever infected the flagship, Laura said. They don't understand that it's just jokes and paradoxes overloading their systems. They think it's some kind of weaponized logic virus. The command center erupted in cheers as more alien ships began to move away from Earth. Susan felt relief wash over her, but she knew it wasn't over yet. We should expect a counterstrike, she warned. They'll regroup and try again with new defenses. Admiral Clark nodded. But we've bought ourselves time, and we've learned something vital. They have a weakness we can exploit. Later that day, Nicole Davis was brought to the command center after being rescued. She had a bandaged arm but was otherwise unharmed. The room applauded as she entered. Nice flying, Major, Admiral Clark said, shaking her hand. You may have saved humanity. Nicole smiled tiredly. All I did was deliver the package. It was their jokes that did the real damage. As the alien fleet continued to withdraw to a safe distance, world leaders gathered to discuss next steps. The Vraxians were damaged but not defeated. Humanity needed to prepare for their return. Patricia had been studying the disabled alien ships. Their technology is amazing. If we could capture one intact, we might be able to reverse engineer their systems, or at least understand them better, Susan added. Know their weaknesses for when they return. Frank had been monitoring the few remaining alien transmissions. They're talking about us differently now. Not as primitives to be conquered, but as some kind of logical aberration. They can't comprehend how we think. Laura smiled. That's our advantage. They think in straight lines. We think around corners. Susan looked at the tactical display, showing the alien ships now clustered far from Earth. Humanity had won this battle with jokes and puns, with creativity rather than firepower. We should prepare a proper greeting for when they come back, she said. I'm thinking stand-up comedy, broadcast across the entire solar system. Frank grinned. I nominate Admiral Clark to deliver the first knock-knock joke. The Admiral, despite his exhaustion, actually smiled. I'll practice my delivery. The Empire came in strength. Humans replied with a punchline. 1 week after the Vraxian fleet first appeared in Earth's orbit, the last of their ships vanished from the solar system. Their retreat was not orderly. Some ships had been abandoned. Their crews evacuated to functioning vessels. Others had been destroyed by their own fleet to prevent the spread of what they now called the human logic virus. In Colorado, the Earth Defense Force headquarters had become the center of worldwide celebration and planning. Scientists from every nation gathered to study the disabled alien ships that remained in orbit. Military leaders developed new defense strategies based on what they had learned about the Vraxians. And the team that had saved humanity with jokes was working harder than ever. Susan Miller, now promoted to admiral, stood at the head of the conference table. Around her sat the people who had turned the tide against an alien invasion. The good news, she said, is that we've won this battle. The bad news is that the Vraxian Empire spans 3 galactic sectors, according to the data we recovered from their ships. They will be back, and they will be prepared for our humor tactics. Laura Bennett nodded. They're already developing countermeasures. Before they left, we detected them trying to create algorithms that could filter out humor and paradoxes from our transmissions. Will that work? Asked Admiral Clark, who now served as Earth's representative to the newly formed Global Defense Council. Frank Johnson shook his head. Not completely. They can program their systems to recognize known jokes and block them, but they can't understand humor on a fundamental level. It would be like us trying to experience a sense we don't possess. Patricia Gomez had been leading the team studying alien technology. We've made incredible breakthroughs. Their faster-than-light drives work on principles we never imagined. Their energy weapons are beyond anything we could have developed in 100 years. But their computer systems have a fatal flaw. They're too logical, too literal. They can't handle ambiguity. So we double down on what makes us human, Susan said. While we develop our technology, we also develop our secret weapon, our creativity, our ability to think in ways they can't predict. The next 5 years were a time of rapid advancement for humanity. Using the captured alien technology, Earth built its first true space fleet. The ships were smaller than the Vraxian vessels but incorporated human-designed systems specifically created to be unpredictable. The first ship of this new fleet was named the Punchline. Admiral Susan Miller was given command, with Frank Johnson as her communications officer and Dr. Laura Bennett heading the Psychological Warfare Division. On the 5th anniversary of what became known as the Humor War, the long-range sensors detected a new Vraxian fleet entering the outer solar system. This time there were over 200 ships. "They're not taking any chances," Susan said as she stood on the bridge of the Punchline. Around her, a fleet of 50 Earth ships prepared to defend their home. The main screen activated, showing a new alien face. This was not Zexithar, but another, Vraxian with darker scales and 6 eye ridges that indicated higher rank in their military. "I am Grand Admiral Kolvex of the Vraxian Empire," the alien said. "Our previous commander was weak and unprepared. I am not. Your humor weapons have been studied and countered. Surrender now, or we will destroy your planet without further communication." Susan glanced at Laura, who nodded. Their plan was ready. "This is Admiral Susan Miller of Earth," she responded. "We wish to avoid conflict. Perhaps we can find common ground." The alien's eyes narrowed. "There is no common ground. You will submit or be destroyed." Susan smiled. "Before you make that decision, we have prepared a special transmission for you. A peace offering, if you will." She nodded to Frank, who pressed a button on his console. The transmission was not jokes this time. It was something the Vraxians would never expect: music. Earth sent its greatest gift to the stars. Bach and Beethoven, jazz and blues, rock and hip-hop, folk songs from every culture and nation. Music that made no logical sense but spoke directly to emotions the Vraxians didn't know they had. The alien ships did not immediately respond. Their weapons remained powered but did not fire. "What are they doing?" Frank asked after several minutes of silence. Laura checked her readings. "Their ships are active, but they're diverting power from weapons to communication systems again. They're sharing the music throughout their fleet, trying to understand it." After an hour, Grand Admiral Kolvex reappeared on screen. He looked confused. "What is this transmission?" "It contains mathematical patterns but no information. It creates sensations that have no purpose." Susan leaned forward. "It's called music, Grand Admiral. It's another form of human expression like humor. It doesn't need to have a purpose to have value." The alien was silent for a long moment. "We wish to understand this music and your humor. They are weapons unlike any we have encountered." "They're not weapons," Susan said. "They're part of what makes us human. We use them to express joy, sadness, love, and 1,000 other emotions. We would be happy to share them with you, not as weapons, but as gifts." The standoff lasted 3 days. The Vraxian ships remained in position, but they continued to accept transmissions of music, poetry, art, and even comedy. Their responses became less hostile, more curious. On the 4th day, Grand Admiral Kolvex requested a face-to-face meeting. Susan agreed, and arrangements were made for the first official diplomatic contact between humans and Vraxians. The meeting took place on the Punchline. Susan, Laura, Frank, and Admiral Clark represented Earth. Grand Admiral Kolvex brought 3 senior officers. The aliens moved stiffly, uncomfortable in Earth's gravity, but they made the effort to come in person. "Your species is an anomaly," Kolvex said once they were seated. "For 10,000 cycles, the Vraxian Empire has encountered only logical, predictable species. Your minds work in ways we cannot comprehend, yet you have achieved space travel and complex society. You are dangerous but interesting." Susan smiled. We find your species interesting as well. Perhaps we can learn from each other. The Empire does not learn from lesser species, one of the Vraxian officers said sharply. Kolvex made a silencing gesture. That was our old thinking. It nearly led to our defeat by a species we considered primitive. He turned to Susan. We propose a treaty. The Vraxian Empire will recognize Earth's sovereignty and right to exist. In exchange, we wish to establish cultural exchange programs to study your creativity. The treaty was signed that day. Earth would remain independent, and humans would be allowed to travel through Vraxian space. In return, humanity would share its art, music, and yes, its humor, with a species that had never known such things existed. As the Vraxian delegation prepared to leave, Grand Admiral Kolvex approached Susan privately. Admiral Miller, I must confess something. I have been listening to a form of music your people call jazz. I do not understand it. It follows no predictable pattern. Yet I find myself experiencing something when I hear it. Is this what you call enjoyment? Susan smiled. It might be. That's the thing about being human, Admiral. Sometimes we don't understand why something moves us. We just know that it does. The Vraxian made a gesture that might have been a smile. The Empire came in strength, and humans replied with a punchline. Now I wish to understand the joke. That, Susan said, might be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. 5 years later, the first Vraxian comedy club opened on their homeworld. The comedian was terrible, but the audience laughed anyway. They were learning.